Your passport may be under attack. If not now, it's sometime in the future, because you don't own your passport. The government does. They set the terms, they determine if you get one and where you can go with it. Let's talk about what our friend Parviz Malakouti calls passport attack vectors. Threats to your ability to obtain, renew, or possess a valid passport from your country of citizenship, whether you were born there, whether you were naturalized there, whether you get citizenship by investment. These are the threats you should be worried about. These are his 9 ideas that you should be concerned could happen to you, and why having more than one passport is a good idea. Because we've told you over the years, politicians in Canada, for example, oh, you want to go to a protest? Hey, maybe we'll arrest you, and then you can't go to the US, you can't travel, you can't get a passport. Other politicians in places in the UK, oh, you were a hooligan at a football match, or you committed a crime and you did your time and now we don't want to give you a passport. There are all new kinds of schemes that politicians, largely in the West, the free West, ironically, are saying, hey, let's not give certain kinds of people passports. Here are the 9 attack vectors, as Parviz mentions them. Number 1, your government cancels your passport. His example is the US and Edward Snowden. You might say, hey, I'm not Edward Snowden. The government can cancel your passport for any number of reasons. In the United States, for example, if you've got a back tax debt, not something that you should try and have, but if for some reason you had a tax debt, they can cancel your passport. They let the State Department know, hey, this person shouldn't have a passport. So if your government cancels your passport, you're grounded. Now, if you're overseas, you can get a passport to come one way back to your country. But if you're in your country, you won't be able to leave. The second issue is someone steals or confiscates your passport. So let's say you're a tourist traveling abroad. Right? You go somewhere adventurous and someone takes your passport. That can be an issue. How do you get a new passport? Can be difficult. Now, people have commonly said, oh, I'm not so sure about these Caribbean citizenships, because where are the embassies to help me? And in some cases, you can actually use the British Embassy due to their Commonwealth status. So it doesn't only mean that bigger countries are better in this case. Number 3 is, what if you lose your passport? Whether you're at home or whether you're somewhere else, what do you do then? Number 4 is your government is too strained, inept, corrupt, or backlogged to create or renew your passport. We've seen this in Venezuela, where people were having to pay bribes to get a passport, which made it all but impossible for the average person to go. That's why you've seen huge migration from Venezuela in recent years to Colombia, but also down as far as Chile. They could also apply to what happened during the pandemic. I've told you that I had a real estate deal that required both sides to have a passport. I had my passport, and the other person in the United States did not have their passport because they were putting in to renew it, and it was taking a long, long time. So not only was their ability to travel compromised, because the government was not moving efficiently. I never understood that, by the way. You put a few people in a room processing passports. It's not like you're having thousands of people in one place and you put them in the mail and you send them out. It seemed like there would be procedures you could follow to keep putting out passports. But you had the US, you had Canada, you had many other countries that just wouldn't give you a passport. It was taking a long, long time. And by the way, what's to say a government couldn't, rather than saying, hey, we're not going to give you a passport, say, because of this or that, it's taking a long, long time. What I've told you from day one of Nomad Capitalist is that governments will use more and more de facto or backdoor ways to cut you out of services that you should receive, things that you've paid taxes for, things that you're paying a fee for. This is just another possible example. Hey, we'd love to give you a passport, but we're really backlogged. Sorry, it's COVID, it's this, it's that. So if your government is too strained, inept, corrupt, or backlogged to renew your passport in a timely fashion, a passport delayed is a passport not received. The 5th thing is that your passport is with a foreign consulate awaiting a visa stamp while you need to travel urgently. Had this with somebody recently. They had to send out their passport for 8 weeks. Couldn't go anywhere. Now, in some cases, your country will issue you a second passport, not a second passport of a different country, of course, but they'll say, oh, we'll give you a second passport from our country. So Some Americans, for example, have gotten 4-year second U.S. passports they can travel on. You have to write a certain statement, and some people do actually get denied for that. We have people who work for us in Georgia who have gotten 1-year special passports. Let's say they need to go between Armenia and Azerbaijan, or they need to apply for visas and they can't wait. But if you need to go somewhere while your passport is in an embassy, you're getting a visa, that can be an issue. Number 6, you can't renew your passport because you're seeking asylum. Probably not applying people here, but that is an issue. Number 7, someone, like a border agent, damages or destroys your passport. Ever had that happen? The worst thing is they stamp it. Fewer countries are stamping now, in all fairness. The best is Japan with the little stickers they put in there. But when they're still doing the stamp and then they just close your passport and then it smears all over the facing page. People have had, border agents do all kinds of things to their passports, drop it, they bend it. Sometimes you go to a hotel and they just put it, in a compromising position. They just kind of lay it down, or a bank just lays it down. In some countries, passports just, the binding comes undone. So that could happen. And then what do? No other country is going to want to accept your destroyed or screwed up passport. Another issue, your government challenges your naturalization eligibility when you try to renew your passport. And so his example is Hungarian simplified naturalization, where you became naturalized in a country, let's say by descent, or let's say you were born in that country. I had a story of someone where his wife was Brazilian through her parents, but had never lived in Brazil, wasn't born in Brazil. And when she went in to apply for a Brazilian passport that she hadn't had in a long, long time, they're like, but you don't speak Portuguese, really? And she had to really, convince them with all the documents and yes, this is real, that she actually was Brazilian. So that can be an issue if you are not keeping your passport up to date, if there's some kind of odd circumstance. Doesn't mean you're a citizen any less, and she ultimately did get the passport, but it just became a bit more of an issue. And the last thing is that a court or government agency demands the surrender of your passport. Again, you don't have to be SBF or some criminal mastermind for this to happen to you. There have been cases when people who, had assets in foreign trusts that they were arguing shouldn't be turned over to the government. Oh, okay, well, you know what? While we're resolving this, you need to not leave the country. And so these are issues that a second passport would solve. Not a second passport from the same country, but a second passport from a different country. These are also issues that having citizenship in one country and living in a different country with multiple passports would solve. Because if you're in the United States, you're supposed to leave with your US passport. You're not supposed to leave as the citizen of a foreign country, even though there's no exit immigration in the US. And so these are just 9 reasons why you'd actually want to have the physical travel document, right? If you're American and if you're a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis as well, and your American passport gets banged up or gets stolen or whatever else, you can still use the St. Kitts passport. Now, different countries may act differently. So let's say you go to a country in Europe and you're traveling around with one passport in your pocket and one in the safe at the hotel, and you entered with the one in your pocket. Number one, probably not a good idea. But certain countries will be more or less strict on letting you leave with the other passport. I know China, I think, was very strict in terms of you need to go and fill out 1 million forms and it's very circuitous. Other countries are just like, okay, great, we don't really care. But the bottom line is, even though a passport is not citizenship, citizenship entitles you to a passport, not the other way around. The passport itself helps you in bank accounts, helps you get into countries, is needed, as I said, for real estate transactions, forming companies around the world. It's important. And so you want to make sure you have access to that. Having more than one citizenship that entitles you to more than one passport means that you will be able to avoid many potential issues as you're traveling around the world, in addition to tax, freedom, lifestyle benefits that comes with it. You'll avoid a lot of these frustrations too.